Hey, good morning, class, or good afternoon, wherever you are. So, my research topic for this class was: is it morally right to require all children in the United States to be vaccinated? Something that's really controversial, and especially with today's going times with COVID-19. So, I kind of chose this subject because it's something I've always found interesting, especially with all the political stuff going on, um, and all that such. So, let's dive in and let's get going with this. So, the difference between ethical and moral, it related to what do you call it, children vaccines. So the benefits of it. The benefits of getting vaccinated, you're not gonna get sick, longer life expectancies, and what do you call it? Really, there's a ton, and you can actually go to school, which we'll get into that later. It's something I didn't know about. Um, there's a lot of science behind it. So with all the science that goes into vaccines, I mean, it's one thing if you look at the COVID vaccine. I understand that because if you look at the kind of the moral, the ethical side of it is why are we able to get a cure for something that was just created, but we haven't had cancer. We have tons of other uh, illnesses that we have spent millions and billions of dollars on that haven't been cured. So there's a lot of different ethical and moral things in it between each individual person, which our textbook says everything's gonna be different between an individual person. You can have everyone has their own different sides of ethics and moral beliefs. So between that, in which with our government, which they control, they introduce mandates. Mandates help create kind of a structure and a requirement for all individuals and what the government requires to kind of help keep, in a way, deaths, illnesses down, which comes into play with the CDC. Um, with all these medicines that we've come in, looking back at the 17, 1800s, life expectancies have increased. People are living to 110, 108 years old now. I mean, some would say, okay, that's too long. Just kidding. But what do you call it? It's one of those things that now you're getting a longer lifespan out of it. Of course, we still have our young that die, or people that die young from either accidents or whatnot. But now with people not being vaccinated, who's to say that those life expectancies aren't going to decrease if people aren't vaccinating their children like how we used to? So those people that oppose vaccines, they're a risk to society. From what I was researching on, there's a lot of research shows that those that are not being vaccinated have a higher risk of transporting diseases, whether it's measles, chickenpox, all those other forms of illnesses, even the bubonic plague. I was reading on one, which is like something that I thought was gone, which turns out can easily come back. Of course, your common flu. You're not vaccinated, you're not going to have the needed uh, items or in a way genes, antibodies. That's the word I'm looking for. Antibodies to actually get rid of the common flu. So, and another risk is the cold. The cold is something that can cause pneumonia, can cause tons of other different types of illnesses just because one common cold. So, by having your vaccines and keeping up to date on all that such, you actually limit yourself to the actual thing. So, those that oppose vaccines are actually a risk to society if you look at it from a moral and ethical value point, because now you're just because this one person in your child's class doesn't want to be vaccinated, now you've got the whole class at risk for measles, for chickenpox, for the bubonic plague. Just something that, as I was going on and on researching it about, that I figured out. Um, on one study that I was reading about, they actually did a whole group of people. So you have your cognitive reflection ability, which is people that actually think about it and kind of reflect on it, which those are the A1 group. And you have your rational thinking style, that's the H2 group. And then you have your experimental people, which is your H3A negative group, which they kind of give the vaccination attitudes. And then what do you call it, the H2B positive group, which they kind of turn into. And you get your vaccination behavior against COVID-19, whether it's a yes or no. So all these people in this study, kind of what they did is they tried to figure out who did liked what, who believed in what, and then they showed where you're gonna go, what happens if you don't vaccine, or what happens if you do, and they try to, in a way, change people's mind and see if they could change it and what their whole mindset on it was. The outcome of this was about 50%, 57% people saying they will vaccinate, and the other part wasn't. Something that blew my mind was the in depth that they went into the study on it, which was honestly astonishing because they actually kind of, in a way, showed people what would happen to their child, what would happen to the world if they didn't do it. Of course, if you don't do it, you're going to get outbreaks, which is what I was talking about earlier. Diseases are passed through human beings, whether it's from the air, touch of the doorknob surfaces, all other forms of outbreaks could come down from it. Uh, these vaccines that we've created, have are designed to help fight off airborne and physical germs. Of course, you have your hand sanitizer now, such as being actually cleanlier. I mean, now you look back 200 years where we were actually kind of showering once a week, a couple times a year, um, which of course it also goes in the cleanliness of it. So, I guess there's tons of ways to look at it. I guess from what I was reading on it, is some people believe that they didn't want to vaccinate their children at so young, meaning 3 months. They wanted to wait till they were 2 or 3, let them actually develop, don't introduce any foreign things to their body. I 100% agree on that one. From my moral and my physical thought of ethics, is why would I give my infant something? You know, it could be in a way I don't know what it is, if it's harmful to them or not, until they're older. Something that I've always believed in on it. Of course, you've got the measles, the flu, the cold, common cold, and of course COVID-19. Now, of course, there's different strains of COVID, and there's always going to continue to be different strains of COVID, just as much as there's different strains of flu. Something that'll probably never go away, and something that we have to realize now that's never going to go away. So, by having the science and trusting in the science and trusting in the CDC and our government, is something that we have to, in a way, only form and shape of what we're going to do as a society, of it all. So overview and questions of everything. So why do we vaccinate? We vaccinate so that we can, one, have a longer life expectancy, limit the amount of sick people we have. Of course, people not getting vaccinated, hospitals are going to fill up, everything's going to go downhill real quick. What's the reason for mandatory vaccines? For those that don't want to vaccinate. We have mandatory vaccines so we can stop the spread of major illnesses that could have the potential to wiping out half the population, i.e. the bubonic plague, the Black Plague. Um, why do schools and daycares require it? Because children are dirty. Best way to say it. Children pass on so many different diseases and common illnesses just because they touch, they put things in their mouth, they don't think, they don't wash their hands like you and I do as adults. So that's why daycares require it, and because there's so many people in a small, tight space, they could have 30 kids and 4 adults. Easily be passed around. Those 30 kids, one common flu. Now they're going home to their families. Their parents work. Their parents go to work. They pass it to those people. It spreads too rapidly. Um, how do we control those that don't get vaccinated? Well, don't allow their kids in the school system, which they won't. The government won't. And then you also look at the what do you call it? I mean, some places now, where at least where I lived in Palm Springs, California, you couldn't even go grocery shopping without proof of COVID-19 vaccine. So the city wouldn't allow you in. It was a city ordinance. So you had someone at the door checking your vaccination card. So it's one of those things that there's tons of ways to go about it, and the way that the government will do it, but it's a matter of per individual. Now, is that ethical to block people from getting food just because they're not vaccinated? No, I don't think so. I think that we need to have, I mean, I guess this kind of goes back to segregation. Do you have grocery stores for those that are not vaccinated and those that are? Um, this can go down a spiral loop where this can become a whole negative experience for the world. Um, of course, can we control it? No, yes and no. You and I can't, but the government can, and the world can, I guess, is a common word, but it also goes down to my body, my choice. Do we force those to get vaccinated? It's their body, it's their choice. They don't get vaccinated, let them die off. It goes hand in hand with everything. Um, will this potentially lead to a major outbreak of old diseases? I think so. I think if we start having children and adults that are not vaccinated and going out in the world, you're gonna get diseases from third world countries when they come over. You're gonna get a whole different type of situation going involved. So whether we have to grow in a way, develop highly off of it, and I guess our genes become stronger, or do we end up just letting it go and watching this world go to hell, I guess? Excuse my French, but that's where at this point, if people don't get vaccinated on it, that's where this world can go. Is we're going to have less people on the world. That's just my political belief on it and the whole thing. I mean, politics, I'm not going to get started on that because that plays a major role in the COVID vaccine, between them saying don't trust the science, blah, blah, blah. But that's just the political sense of it all. Now, this is my references. Um, if you're looking for the study that was done in it, it is my fourth one down. That is the best one I found in it with the study. Of course, thank you guys. Thanks for listening to my TED Talk. Get your kid vaccinated from what I researched. I got my kid vaccinated. I believe it all. Thank you guys.